In September 2005, something extraordinary happened beneath the waters of Ponza Island in Italy. Deep in the sea, where silence is absolute and time seems to stand still, a couple dared to do what no one had attempted before: spend 10 consecutive days submerged. At first, it seemed impossible. How could the human body endure such a hostile environment for so long? How would the mind react to absolute isolation and the darkness of underwater nights? Yet, that was the goal: to challenge the limits of possibility and document every detail of this unprecedented experience. The world watched with curiosity and skepticism. The questions were many. Why would anyone do this? Was it safe? What would they do if something went wrong down there? All of this made the experiment even more fascinating. It wasn't just an adventure. It was a dive into the unknown, both of the sea and the human condition. But this wasn't just any story of exploration. The protagonists had something special: a unique combination of courage, passion for the unknown, and the certainty that they were about to make history. The heroes of this story were Stefano Barisi and Stefania Mensa, a couple who not only loved the sea but lived to explore it. They were known for their skill in extreme dives, but there was something else that set them apart: the way they turned each challenge into an opportunity to learn something new. Stefano, with his sharp eyes and calculated demeanor, was the strategist. He planned every detail with near-obsessive precision, from the equipment to the schedule. Stefania, on the other hand, had an adventurous spirit that balanced Stefano's meticulousness. She saw beauty where others saw danger and faced the unknown with a smile, but behind their determination lay a restlessness. This experiment wasn't just a personal milestone. They knew they were treading a fine line between genius and extreme risk. And they also knew that the sea makes no promises of safety. As the day of the dive approached, the tension was palpable. There was something in the air, something no one dared say out loud. When Stefano and Stefania decided to spend 10 days submerged, their goal went far beyond breaking a record. In truth, they wanted answers and were willing to risk everything to get them. What happens to the human body when subjected to such extreme conditions? How does the mind cope with absolute isolation, where the only constant sound is the rhythm of one's breathing? The experiment was also a bridge to the future. Underwater conditions mimic, to some extent, the challenges faced by astronauts on space missions. If the human body could withstand the pressures of the sea for so long, perhaps it could endure even greater challenges in deep space. Stefano, ever meticulous, called this journey the science of survival. But not everything was so serious. For Stefania, the experiment had an almost poetic dimension. "The sea is our last frontier on Earth," she would say. "If we don't understand how to live in it, how can we expect to understand the unknown out there?" Even so, there was a sense of urgency. The sea, as beautiful as it is unpredictable, does not forgive mistakes. Every move would need to be calculated, every reaction of the body documented. Stefano and Stefania knew they were venturing into uncharted territory, and that the answers would only come if they were willing to face whatever awaited them. Planning a 10-day dive was akin to preparing for a life-or-death mission. There was no room for error. Stefano, with his obsession for detail, led the preparations. Every item was tested, retested, and adjusted to ensure that nothing, absolutely nothing, could go wrong. The equipment was innovative. Air hoses connected the couple to the surface, ensuring a constant flow of oxygen. A small bathyscaphe served as a supply depot, storing food, water, and even a space for medical emergencies. Let me make a parenthesis here. If you don't know, a bathyscaphe is a manned or unmanned submersible vehicle commonly used to explore great ocean and lake depths. The word originates from the Greek scaphos, meaning vessel. It's similar to a submarine but without propulsion. Their suits were inflatable and designed to provide comfort and safety, allowing them to rest without unintentionally floating away. But the challenges extended beyond technology. There was the issue of eating, how to eat underwater without everything floating away. And sleeping, how to ensure rest without losing their sense of location or letting exhaustion put them in danger. For Stefania, the hardest part was mental preparation. Spending 10 days away from any human interaction, isolated even from the sky and sunlight, demanded a psychological strength she knew would be tested to its limits. "The sea is beautiful," she said, "but it's also a place where you can lose yourself, literally and within yourself." As the days passed and the experiment's start drew closer, tension mounted. The couple knew they couldn't predict everything, but for them, that's what made the challenge irresistible. The experiment began with a calculated but thrilling dive. As Stefano and Stefania settled 8 meters below the surface, the world above dissolved. There was no longer the sound of birds or the hum of human activity. All that remained was the muffled sound of water and the rhythmic breathing echoing in their ears. The depth seemed ideal, not so shallow as to be insignificant, nor so deep as to compromise safety. Yet even at 8 meters, the underwater environment was challenging. The water temperature fluctuated, and the salty seawater constantly irritated their skin. They knew that with each hour spent there, their bodies became more vulnerable to cold, fatigue, or sheer monotony. The connection to the surface, maintained by air hoses and communication cables, was their lifeline. Stefano, ever methodical, checked the equipment regularly, ensuring the oxygen flowed without interruption. To document the experiment, Stefania used a special underwater notebook with plasticized pages and a unique pencil that allowed her to write underwater. There, she recorded data such as heart rate, energy levels, and even momentary thoughts. Time seemed to flow differently down there. Without sunlight to guide their biological clocks, days and nights blended into an almost endless sequence. It was like being suspended in an alternate reality, where water became both a barrier and a companion. Eating underwater was a challenge in itself. The food needed to be specially packaged to prevent contamination by seawater. The bathyscaphe stored everything: sealed packets of energy-dense food, bottles of water, and even small portions of dehydrated fruit. Stefania found the act of eating underwater amusing. "Everything turns into a military operation," she joked, as she struggled to open a package without letting crumbs float away. There was something almost surreal about chewing while feeling the weight of the water around her and hearing only the muffled sound of her own chewing. The most complicated part was maintaining a balanced diet. Their bodies were constantly adapting to the extreme conditions, and the food needed to provide enough energy without causing discomfort. Stefano monitored everything closely, recording quantities and meal times on a small waterproof board. But not everything was about numbers and planning. Stefania, with her light-hearted nature, turned mealtimes into moments of relaxation. "Who would have thought dehydrated apples could taste like gourmet dessert down here?" she said, eliciting laughter from Stefano. It was a small relief amid the seriousness of the experiment. What about resting and sleeping? Well, sleeping underwater seemed like an impossible idea at first glance. Yet Stefano and Stefania had carefully planned this aspect of the experiment. Submerged hammocks, anchored to the seafloor, served as improvised beds, allowing them to relax without being carried away by currents. Their inflatable suits played a crucial role. When partially inflated, they provided comfortable support for the body, reducing the sensation of being suspended in an endless void. Still, sleep didn't come easily. The first few days were marked by vivid dreams and even nightmares. Stefania admitted to Stefano that she repeatedly dreamed about the air hoses suddenly stopping. Stefano, in turn, frequently woke with the sensation of drifting away, even though he was perfectly secure in the hammock. Over time, their bodies began to adapt, and sleep became somewhat more natural. Yet the hours of rest were never truly complete. The awareness of being in such a hostile environment never fully left them, even during moments when they closed their eyes. If the physical conditions were already demanding, the psychological aspects of the experiment were even more intense. The isolation, near total silence, and absence of any connection to the outside world created a sense of disconnection that was hard to describe. Stefania, usually the more optimistic of the two, began feeling the weight of isolation around the third day. "It's like time doesn't exist here," she said in a recording. "Everything feels the same, and that can be terrifying." Stefano, on the other hand, coped better with the silence but eventually felt the effects of monotony. Communication with the surface was limited and used only for technical matters. There were no familiar voices, no news from the world, no comfort. Their only true company was each other. As solid partners as they were, Sharing such a confined space under immense emotional pressure tested even their strong relationship. However, it was in this solitude that they discovered something surprising. The silence wasn't just oppressive, it was also revealing. Away from the noise of the world, Stefania experienced a mental clarity that surprised her. Stefano, usually reserved, began to see the sea, despite its harshness, as possessing an almost therapeutic serenity. After 10 days submerged, Stefano and Stefania surfaced from the depths of Ponza's waters. The ascent was carried out carefully, following every protocol to avoid decompression issues. The process, though methodical, was charged with emotion, a mix of relief and triumph. When they finally broke through the water's surface, they were greeted by a small team that had monitored the experiment from above. The sunlight, brighter than ever, enveloped them, creating an almost surreal feeling. After so many days in the ocean's isolation, the world above seemed like an entirely different planet. Their initial reaction was euphoria. Stefania, ever lighthearted, joked about how much she had missed hot coffee. Stefano, quieter, seemed to absorb the significance of their accomplishment silently. Yet their expressions radiated unmistakable triumph. They had achieved something many deemed impossible. As the divers removed their inflatable suits and sat on the boat's edge, physical exhaustion finally caught up with them. It was as though the weight of the 10 days underwater hit all at once. But the smiles on their faces said it all. The sea had tested their limits, and they had emerged victorious. Shortly after the experiment's conclusion, Stefano and Stefania held a press conference to share their impressions. Stefania, always spirited, began with a joke. "I won't lie. I thought several times the air was going to run out, but luckily it was just paranoia." The room erupted in laughter, but everyone knew there was an emotional depth behind the humor. Stefano, as usual, was more technical. He spoke about the lessons learned regarding the human body's behavior under extreme conditions. According to him, the most surprising discovery was the body's resilience, which, even under constant pressure, managed to adapt. But the real test, he added, was for the mind. Silence can be as heavy as the ocean itself. Both reflected on how the experience had changed their perception of the sea and themselves. Stefania described the isolation as an introspective journey. The sea doesn't just challenge you. It also reveals who you truly are. For Stefano, the experiment proved that preparation and determination could overcome even the most unpredictable challenges. At that moment, they weren't just celebrating their accomplishment. They were inspiring others to push the boundaries of science and human courage. The experiment conducted by Stefano and Stefania was not only a test of human endurance but also a significant contribution to science. Researchers and physiologists were fascinated by the data collected during the 10 days underwater. Never before had it been possible to closely study the human body's responses in prolonged immersion conditions. The results provided important insights. For example, they discovered that metabolism slows in prolonged underwater environments, a finding that could be valuable for survival strategies in extreme situations. Additionally, the psychological effects recorded offered a better understanding of how isolation and monotony impact the human brain, crucial information for both space missions and underwater exploration. The experiment also highlighted the importance of innovative equipment. The adaptation of air hoses and the functionality of the bathyscaphe, for instance, became models studied by engineers developing technologies for extreme environments. What seemed like a bold test turned into a milestone in the fusion of science, technology, and human courage. The accomplishment of Stefano and Stefania received widespread recognition, garnering attention from renowned scientific publications and international media. Articles about the experiment appeared in magazines such as National Geographic, which highlighted the technological innovation used in the dive, and Scientific American, which explored the physiological discoveries related to human endurance under extreme conditions. Television programs also took interest in the experiment. The documentary Depth Defiers, aired on the Discovery Channel, recounted the couple's bold venture. In Italy, the popular science show Superquark dedicated an entire episode to detailing the planning, execution, and outcomes of the experiment. Film and science festivals, such as the Ocean Film Festival, showcased footage of the feat, inspiring others to consider the potential of human exploration into the unknown. It was an effort that uniquely combined courage and science, remarked one event organizer. This recognition not only celebrated the record, but also underscored the experiment's scientific and inspirational value. For Stefano and Stefania, the impact of their mission was clear. More than setting a record, we showed that there is so much more to discover. In the sea and within ourselves, Stefania reflected. Although the experiment was fundamentally a physical test, it revealed much about human nature. The forced isolation, absolute silence, and lack of distractions tested not only the body but also the mind. Stefano described how the vastness of the sea could be incredibly intimidating. Down there, you realize how small we are compared to nature, he said. But you also realize that this smallness makes us incredibly adaptable. For Stefania, the greater challenge was coping with the passage of time. Every minute felt like an eternity, she explained. But somehow you find strength in repetition, in routine. This experience provided a deeper understanding of human resilience. It showed that even under extreme conditions, there is room for growth and learning, a legacy that goes far beyond the depths of the sea. Furthermore, the experiment served as a model for future underwater experiments and missions in extreme environments, including space. Research agencies began exploring the idea of using extended underwater periods as training for astronauts, based on the data collected during the 10 days in Ponza's waters. Beyond that, the couple's story inspired a new generation of divers, scientists, and adventurers. They proved that the unknown is not something to fear but something to explore. Every challenge they faced now serves as a foundation for those who seek to push beyond their limits. If you found this Italian couple's story fascinating, let us know in the comments what stood out to you the most. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with friends who love impactful stories like this. Oh, and since we're talking about sea stories, I've prepared an incredible video that's appearing on the screen now. Feel free to click and watch. I'll stop here and see you in the next video about sea stories.